The landlord thought he had won. He believed he had trapped a small restaurant owner into paying hundreds of thousands of dollars or facing financial ruin. He threatened, he bullied, he smiled while doing it. And then, one signed letter destroyed a deal worth millions. What he didn't realize was that the person he tried to intimidate had already started planning his downfall weeks earlier. If you've ever dealt with someone who abused power just because they could, someone who believed money made them untouchable, then this story is going to feel incredibly satisfying. Hit like, subscribe, and settle in, because today's story is about patience, strategy, and the most elegant revenge I've ever witnessed.
There are bad landlords, and then there are commercial landlords. The kind who don't just rent space, they control livelihoods. In the early 90s, I rented office space in an aging downtown building. Nothing fancy. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, carpet older than most interns. I shared the office with Aaron, an older lawyer who had seen everything and trusted almost nobody. But we both agreed on one thing. Our landlord was a nightmare. He didn't manage the building, he hunted tenants. Late rent, threaten lock change. Minor dispute, threaten eviction. Ask for repairs, suddenly your lease had violations. He thrived on pressure. You could feel it whenever he walked the halls. Heavy footsteps, loud breathing, keys jingling like a warning bell. People lowered their voices when he passed. Not out of respect, out of exhaustion.
In the basement was a restaurant called The Vault, and it was unforgettable. Decades earlier, the building had been a bank. When it closed, someone converted the old underground vault into a dining room. Massive steel door, rows of gleaming safe deposit boxes, soft lighting reflecting off polished metal. You could eat pasta inside a literal bank vault. It was strange, beautiful, and always busy. I ate there often. One afternoon, halfway through lunch, the owner pulled me aside. He looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. "The landlord's driving me insane," he said quietly.
That's his personality.
But this was different. He slid a letter across the table. A demand notice. Page after page of charges. Snow removal from years ago, parking lot repairs, floor maintenance, random shared expenses, all suddenly payable. And at the bottom, the familiar threat. Pay immediately or the locks will be changed. My stomach tightened. This wasn't normal harassment. This was a squeeze. "I think he knows I'm moving," the owner said. The restaurant had outgrown the basement space. Business was good. They'd found a new location. And the landlord wanted one last payday. Then came the real problem. "The vault," the owner said. I blinked. "What about it?" He sighed. "The lease says I have to remove it when I leave." I laughed at first. Then I realized he wasn't joking. The vault weighed nearly 100 tons. Removing it would require demolition crews, engineers, structural reinforcement. It would cost a fortune. "And if I don't?" I asked. "He says you'll sue." I asked him to send me the lease. When it arrived upstairs later that afternoon, I understood immediately how bad things were. The lease wasn't simple. It was decades old, renewed, reassigned, rewritten countless times. Originally signed when a bank installed the vault after World War II. Somehow, over generations of paperwork, the restaurant owner had inherited responsibility for removing it. And then I saw the worst line. A personal guarantee. He wasn't protected by a company. If things went wrong, he would personally owe the money. His savings, his home, everything. Legally, he was trapped.
I sat alone in my office, staring at the lease. There was no clean legal escape. Any honest lawyer would say the same thing. Case closed. But I kept thinking about the landlord, his threats, his arrogance, his constant intimidation. And something clicked. The problem wasn't the law. The problem was the landlord's greed. And greed is predictable. I picked up the phone. "I'm finished, right?" the owner answered before I spoke. I paused. "No," I said slowly. "I can save you." Silence. "How much?" 5,000 legal fees, and another 1,000 for an agent. Agent? Trust me. The check arrived within an hour. That's when the plan began. I walked into Aaron's office. "I need a real estate agent." He raised an eyebrow. "You buying something?" "No." "You selling something?" "No." He stared at me. "You're planning one of your stunts again, aren't you?" I smiled. Aaron sighed and pulled out his ancient Rolodex. I know a guy. Aaron always knew a guy. That was both his greatest talent and eventually his downfall. But for this plan, perfect. I met the agent the next day. I explained everything. The landlord, the vault, the threats. Then I slid documents across the desk. We drafted something very specific. A letter of intent from a financial institution supposedly interested in leasing the space. Because of the vault. The bait was simple. A bank wanted the property specifically for that massive vault. And suddenly, keeping the vault would make the landlord rich. A few days later, I returned to the restaurant. The owner whispered urgently, "The landlord's here." Perfect. We sat inside the vault room, door nearly closed. Between bites of carbonara and glasses of red wine, I handed him a document. "We're demanding the landlord release everything," I said. "All equipment, fixtures, and the vault." He blinked. "The vault? I don't want it." "You do now," I said. Confusion spread across his face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. We insist on taking it." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Then I added quietly, "Trust the process." We approached the landlord's table. He was eating aggressively, tearing into a rack of lamb with his hands. Grease on his fingers, confidence in his posture. He barely looked up. "My client needs an answer," I said. "I'm keeping the vault," he replied instantly. Exactly as predicted. I feigned shock. "But you can't refuse?" He laughed. "I'm the landlord. I do what I want." I asked for confirmation in writing. He happily agreed. Because in his mind, he had just won. The written response arrived later that day. The landlord officially claimed ownership of the vault. I handed the letter to the restaurant owner. He stared at it, stunned. "How did you make him do that?" I smiled. Greed. Now the lease obligation was gone. If the landlord owned the vault, the tenant no longer had to remove it. The trap was sprung. A month later, the restaurant moved out. New location, same name, same atmosphere. Just one difference. No vault. Back in our building, the basement sat empty. And inside it remained one massive, immovable, 100-ton problem. The landlord believed salvation was coming because our real estate agent had presented him with an incredible opportunity. A bank interested in leasing the space. A lucrative deal. All dependent on one thing. The vault staying exactly where it was. He waited eagerly for signing day. I arrived at work one morning, Aaron stopped me in the hallway. "The landlord's furious," he said. "Why?" "The bank never showed up." I nodded slowly. A few days later, the landlord cornered me, face red, jowls shaking. "I know this was you," he shouted. The fake offer, the interest, the negotiations. He finally understood. He had been manipulated into keeping the vault so the restaurant could leave without liability. "I'm gonna sue everyone," he yelled. I calmly replied, "I'll have to declare a conflict." He stormed away. But he never sued. Because legally, there was nothing to sue over. The letter of intent was non-binding. Perfectly legal. Perfectly useless. Exactly as designed.
Months passed. The basement remained empty. Potential tenants walked away after seeing the massive vault occupying valuable space. Removing it now? The landlord's responsibility. Hundreds of thousands in costs. Lost rent. Lost deals. Every day the faded "for rent" sign sat in the window was another reminder of his own greed. He had tried to crush a small business owner. Instead, he trapped himself. And the best part? He had signed the decision himself. Some revenge is loud. Some revenge is emotional. But the most satisfying kind is when someone defeats themselves, simply because they couldn't resist being greedy. Justice doesn't always come from anger. Sometimes it comes from patience, strategy, and letting arrogance do all the work. If this story gave you that sweet feeling of karma finally arriving, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone destroy themselves because of greed?